and I started to realize, hey, it's not everybody who's like that. It's a handful of people who just decided to be ignorant towards everybody else that made me scared when I was a kid, and I need to really give every person a fair chance to show who they are.
Welcome to another episode of Navigating the Rise. Today I have this great, awesome person named Sunny. So Sunny has been a very interesting career path. So he's Indian, but he didn't grow up to be Indian. He can talk to you more about that later. Where basically he was trying to be integrated into the American culture, both on the family. You can say pressure, but among parents and environment that wants them to be integrated into the U.S. society. So at the same time, he is now very good at marketing. So what basically he used marketing analytics and using marketing in a way of science and systems as opposed from the qualitative studies. So basically, I'll let Sunny briefly introduce himself so he can really break it down to you what he does and where he comes from.
First, George, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you. Been friends for a long time, and having come from two different Asian backgrounds, we've had a chance to talk about this, but not in front of other people who might benefit from the conversation. So it's cool that I can come and do this with you. My path to marketing, it really goes back a long way from growing up as an Indian child in a mostly white neighborhood where I was. At the time, in the early 1980s, there was a lot of racism, unfortunately, and I can't say accustomed to it because it was too scary for me. But when you have your tires slashed and you see your windows broken and people say things to you and like use racial slurs, things like that, it's a very scary thing. And I was traumatized from a very early age, and I just became scared of. It sounds really bad, but I was scared of white people, honestly. I had a very hard time. Even approaching someone with that complexion without having my heart start beating through my chest because I didn't know who was safe and who wasn't. And so reflecting on that, it really occurred to me that that's how our brains work. And then neuroscience later on proved that people immediately tag things in their minds, and they don't do this consciously, but it happens unconsciously. They tag things as either safe or not safe, and then they immediately react. So we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, as the saying goes. So I grew up with really severe social anxiety. That racism that happened to me when I was just a young child translated into social anxiety of all kinds because I just started avoiding all kinds of situations in school and elsewhere. Where school was the main thing that kids do, right? And I grew up like that. I couldn't talk to a girl to save my life. It was terrible. It was really, I mean, it was really, really painful. I mean, I laugh about it now, but it was awful. In my early 20s, I started just talking to grocery store cashiers because most of them were girls. And every time I walked up to the grocery store line to check out, I would, almost forget my name. I was just so nervous. Like that's how bad it was. And I decided that that's how I needed to start because I had to go and buy food and I needed to do some basic things to live. And I really had gotten comfortable with just the academic side of school. I was, and I did very technical types of things in school. Computer science, electrical engineering is what I went to college for, and I got good at that. But I was terrible with people, and I had to make a decision that if I didn't want to suffer in life, I had to wait. I had to find a way to connect with people, and that social anxiety, that pain, really drove me to want to understand how to connect with people better. And I realized eventually that that's what needs to happen in marketing. It's not really just about running a bunch of ads or putting up billboards or something. It's really a connection with people that matters, understanding them and offering value.
Cool. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your exhaustive background. Curious about when you say your neighborhood, which neighborhood did you grow up in?
I grew up here in Long Beach. It's East Long Beach. It's a nice place overall. It's residential and quiet, and there's a park across the street and all of that. It's just nice, but it was the people that weren't nice.
Oh,
It's not the case anymore because things have really changed. People have really evolved. But again, back in the 1980s, things were a lot different.
well, that's good. I guess It's a good thing I don't grew up in Long Beach. I grew up in an Asian town, Rolling Heights. When I grew up, it was about half. About my high school was about 45% Hispanics, 45% Asian, and the rest are other type of ethnicities. So I didn't have that issue.
That's
Thank
cool. Yeah,
God.
I've heard that about Rolling Heights. There are many, especially Taiwanese. I think Taiwanese and Chinese, and there's a good mix of different types of people there. So, and especially as
Yeah.
higher Asian population, so you can feel more at home with your people, and that's a good thing and a bad thing because you might get comfortable within a certain like group of people and then not experience as much of other people. But it's a good thing not to have as much trauma when you're young because it's hard to heal that really.
Yeah. So, I, yeah, I think now it's even more Asian now. It's like Asian all over the place. Everything's in Chinese now. Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah, it's like it's like they have better food there than Chinatown in Los Angeles.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't been out to Rolling Heights in a while. I used to have a friend out there, but
Right. So also want to mention you mentioned also that you say you were kind of scared of Caucasians. How did you actually get over that fear?
really exposure therapy, as they say. And I wasn't doing the formal therapy protocol, but that's what I know it to be now. I had to be around them, and eventually I started to. I met some really nice people who were Caucasian or white, as they say, and I started to realize, hey, it's not everybody who's like that. It's a handful of people who just decided to be ignorant towards everybody else that made me scared when I was a kid, and I need to really give every person a fair chance to show who they are. And if I see that they're safe, then I can actually have them as a friend. And if I see that they're not safe, then I can't as much. Although I was still a little bit scared because I culturally I didn't know who I was because my parents tried to make me as American as possible. When I was growing up, they didn't teach me any of the languages or really any of the culture of Indian culture. When I was growing up, they told me, we want you to be as American as you can because they were facing so much racism, prejudice, and especially my dad. My dad was the breadwinner at that time. He was facing so much of that at work, and I would hear the stories, and it just really hurt me to hear that anybody would mistreat my dad or my mom. They're such genuine, hardworking people that I could hardly bear hearing those stories. So I was scared for that reason, but I just kept trying to see who was safe and who was not safe. To some extent, I just had to because I was around kids all the time at school.
Got it, got it. So you mentioned about your parents making sure that you're should be as American as possible, but you look Indian, of course. Right, they'll give you that exposure to that culture. So I'm curious about how did you actually manage that duality when your parents or family trying to get you to be more American, whereas like you said you didn't have any roots of an Indian culture in you.
It was tough because every time I looked in the mirror, I saw that I this is me, and I look different than a lot of other kids do. And there weren't really many Indian people here in Long Beach at the time. Honestly, there still aren't. Long Beach is not really where Indian people go. Although a few miles away in Cerritos now, that's Little India, so
Wow.
it's not far away. But growing up here, there wasn't that. And then at the time, there was some there in Cerritos, where it is now, Little India, but it wasn't as much there at the time either. So it was a struggle, and I know anytime I had interaction with my relatives, because every now and then I didn't have many relatives here. In fact, I had no relatives here. Actually, physically around me, I had an uncle in New York, and I heard of some kind of auntie that I'd never met in Chicago, and like there was hardly anybody that I knew about. And I had correspondence by mail. There was no email or anything like that at the time. We would write letters back and forth to my grandparents, but I was aware that they were criticizing my parents. They were criticizing me and my brother for not being Indian enough and going away from the culture. And they felt like we were betraying the culture and that kind of thing. So that was hard because I didn't know what to do. And when I first got to go to India, I got a lot of criticism, even as a kid. So I went there, and I think after fourth grade for the first time, and I was not embraced. I mean, it wasn't pleasant.
Yeah. Completely understand. Yeah, it must be really hard. So when it comes to now, let's just dial the conversation back a little bit. You mentioned about being the exposure therapy that helped you overcome your fears. So I imagine that you mentioned also that kind of play into your dating and approaching girls and women. How did you actually get over that from like talking to cashiers, talking to girls in general, or is it also through exposure therapy as well?
That's been a long road. Yeah, that was a long road, and maybe not surprisingly, eventually my first like real girlfriend was a cashier, and she was white. So things worked out. We're not together anymore, but she was an amazing person, and she helped me heal from a lot of things. That's what I found over time, that when I'm every now and then life would give me somebody who was just such a beautiful person, that and like so safe that I could really work with them and be great friends with them and do things with them and heal with them. They would help me. They would listen. They would understand. They would share their own pain, and that's a very healing experience when you can have that with somebody. It A lot of us have many friends, but it's usually a handful of people that will really help you in those ways. So when they come along, it's a really beautiful thing.
Cool. Yeah, let's go deep into your marketing now. So you mentioned about growing up, you have this anxiety. How did also mention about something tying with marketing? How that make you a better marketer, if I understand it correctly. So can you tell me more about how did that social anxiety with their background now makes you now a really awesome marketer at this point?
I think the biggest thing for marketing or sales, really marketing and sales are really two sides of the same coin. It's about selling something, but really it's about offering value. And you can't really offer value if you're thinking about yourself. So it's about empathy first. If the more empathy you can have for someone you're sitting in front of or standing in front of or talking to on the phone, the better you can be at offering value, because you actually really care. You really care about, is this the right solution for them? You want to first understand what their challenges are, and and exactly what their situation is, because every person's situation is a little bit different, or sometimes in some cases it's a lot different than other people you talk to. And then to see, does what I have to offer, does it really fit with them or not? So I know for me, when I was really scared socially, that was the question in my head all the time. It was like, do I fit? Do I fit in? Can I be a fit? Do I have value to offer? And those are like, self-esteem plays in a lot to marketing, because it's really a value question. Do I know about enough about this person, and do I feel like I could be of some kind of value to them? Now, if you have low self-esteem, it's a lot of suffering, and you don't see things clearly. So it's important to heal that. But the more I've healed that, the more I've been able to offer that value and understand people's really their personality types and their needs.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think I have some sort of a lower self esteem too. The way I go around about that was I will ask myself this question. Now, what would George as best do? And then I would take that out of context and say if I was in like at my best, this is how I would approach things. And then so even if I in that moment I have a lower self esteem, I go with the that approach from the what would the best George do, right? And then in that case, whatever that is, I go with that. I suppose letting my say that momentary low self esteem issue cause me to behave in ways that shouldn't be behaving.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
It's reminds me of that concept of performance personas. Like Beyonce has her inner character she calls Sasha Fierce. Before she goes on stage, she's like, "I'm Sasha Fierce," and it's a whole persona she has that lets her go out and own the stage, perform, and be her best. And it's like you're saying, what would the best George do? And that best George is a persona for you. You know what it's like because you've been that guy who walked up to the prettiest girl in the room and looked really good in a suit and felt good driving down the street and listening to his favorite song, and all of like that's stuff the best George enjoys and like amps him up, right, to perform his best, right? So it's important for all of us to have that because we've all been that version of ourselves. It's a pretty cool thing to tap into that.
Yeah, for sure. And then from that perspective, I gotta say though, now with marketing, you mentioned about offering values, having empathy, but now a lot of marketing is about data, right? How can you actually use empathies and using value in marketing when now everything's more about data, looking at data to see which segment, among other things. I'm curious now, how do you blend the two, or how do you move more towards a science approach to marketing?
So data is really just the result of what the interactions are. So sometimes I've worked as an analytics consultant, so data is actually a specialty I have within marketing. That said, people come up to me and they ask me, "Hey, what are the best tools? What's the best tools? What's the best market research?" That's often a good question. What's the best kind of market research I can possibly do? And they're expecting me to tell them something that they should do with Google Analytics or
Uh,
certain tools. And I do tell them those things, but the first thing I always tell them is the best market research you can ever get is just to have a really great conversation with somebody, a really connected conversation where you're very present and you're not thinking about a million other things, and that person really understands that you're here for them, because then they start to open and start to tell you all the really deep emotional stuff that you need to hear about what their real hopes are, what their real fears are. And all of the emotions are flavors of desire. It's not just one or two things. Every emotion anybody can ever express, all the flavors of pain, all the flavors of pleasure, they're all flavors of desire. So all of those emotions are so important to understand. And then you can craft your messaging for that. And then when you do that and you run that, whether it's an advertisement or an email or whatever, then you get data as a result of that. And you can look at the data and see, how well did I do? It's really just a readout on saying, how well did I understand this person and communicate to them? Because if I didn't, then the data is going to show that they're not clicking, they're not engaging, they don't care. And if I'm doing better at that, then it's going to show that too.
got it. So I want to explore more deeper into labor of desire. What does that mean?
Flavors of desire.
Yeah, flavor of desire.
So that's the way I say it. Because there are so many different types of emotions, right? There's really infinitely many flavors of emotions, and we label some of them. We say that person is frustrated, or we say I'm frustrated. We say I'm angry, or I'm worried, or I'm sad, or I'm happy, or I'm thrilled, I'm ecstatic. These are all words that we put on these different intensities and flavors, meaning different feelings that we have, right? But every feeling we have is something that drives us in one way or another to want something different than what we have now. So whether it's a flavor of pain or a flavor of pleasure, it's like, well, we get some kind of clarity from anything we feel about what we actually want to have. So it's always an emotional journey, whether you're selling to a consumer or you're selling to a business. A lot of business owners, like for example, software companies, they take all the emotion out of what they're doing, but really you're selling to somebody who desperately wants to have respect. They want to have they want to look like a hero in their company for buying your solution. And so when we take the emotion out, marketing doesn't work nearly as well, and it starts to look like everything else. And we really have to honor the everything that really have to honor the trauma that people have too, as part of looking at the flavors of emotions, the flavors of desire, the pain and the pleasure. We have to look at, why do they have so much pain? It's not just that they want to have a better solution. It's also all the things that they've tried before that have failed. They've tried to cross this chasm, so to speak, in some way to get what they want. They have this vision of a life that they want, and it's a juicy vision, and they feel good about that when they think about it, but they also feel pain in the same moments because they've tried all these different approaches to somehow get there, and so many of them have failed. It's very rarely the first time that they're trying to achieve something. So we have to, as people who are selling, we have to understand that. We have to clarify what is it that they've tried before, and we have to somehow explain to them why those approaches didn't work. I mean, that's really a form of therapy for them to understand that it wasn't their fault. There's other approaches that are inherently inferior, and the other approaches were just not going to work. And it's not just that they were inept. And so there's actually healing that has to happen in the selling process, and that's why for people who really understand this at a deep level, I say marketing and sales is actually, they're healing arts. They're healing sciences, really, because I define marketing as the science of helping people embrace change. So that all has to start at an emotional level and getting people to feel those emotions and understand that there is a better way to actually achieve what they want to achieve.
Interesting. I'm curious now, from your experience in marketing, how did you actually get to this point? I imagine you must have cultivated a lot of years of experience. Curious about your journey to get to where you are now, where you can think now marketing as a healing art, because that's pretty deep.
It is deep. I was doing all my own personal growth work to heal my own pain, right? And I started to come to these realizations just by working on myself. I'm my own inner laboratory, as we all are. And I had things that I wanted, and I had pain that I was in, and I started to understand this, that I was trying to go on a journey, and I had tried so many things, especially when you talk about healing traumas. I mean, traumas being any kind of pain that is persistent, right? Any kind of, for example, you walk into a room with and you see a pretty girl and you get nervous, and that happens over and over and over again, then that's a form of trauma because it's a pain that continues to be there. And then you start hearing about all these different techniques. Somebody's doing an NLP technique, neuro linguistic. Someone else says, "No, George, you need to tap." And you start tapping all these different spots in your face. So like, no, you just do that before you walk up to her. You'll be okay. And someone else is like, "No, no, no, that tapping stuff, no, it doesn't work nearly as well as, dude, you got to sit in your car first and you got to do some humming. You gotta activate the vibrations in your upper chakras, and that's what you need, man." And someone else is like, "No, man, you got to go to Tony Robbins seminar because he teaches you how to do incantations, and it's powerful, and you actually use your body, and you get in state." And it's like, okay, that makes sense. The thing is, they all make sense in some way, but and some of them are going to help you more than others, and yet at the end of all of that, you might still go, "Man, my heart still beats out of my chest when I try to walk up to her and say something to her." It's like, okay, I've tried all these approaches. Man, I don't think I'm ever going to get past this. This is horrible. This is really horrible. I've been trying to heal this for freaking years, and I've never been able to heal it. I still can't go up to a girl and talk to her, right? Or I still can't go up to a prospect and talk to them about making, whatever solution they might need from me. So that's how a lot of us live our lives. Like, as I think it was Emerson who said, majority, or is it Thoreau, majority of men live their lives in quiet desperation because we've tried so many things and they failed us. So when you start to just see that that's the situation everybody is in some way, and so it is this deep emotional thing for everyone. There's a reason that somebody wants anything is because they think it's going to make them feel a way that they don't feel now, a better way. They believe that having that is going to make them feel better.
Got it, got it. Yeah, I'm really curious now. How does those techniques, when it comes to your personal growth, relate to marketing? You mentioned a little bit already, approaching a girl versus like approaching a prospect. How are those interrelated?
Do you mean the techniques
Yeah,
of healing? Well, the way I relate it is really just something. It's going to be different for every person what actually works. That's one thing. And people just want the simplest thing also that works. But finding that thing for them is often this long, long journey, and they often don't understand um, exactly why what they're doing isn't working. So they need an expert who does understand to come in and help them. And that's how I was. So I spent when I was looking to heal my emotional issues, my pain, I spent a lot of money on coaching, on seminars, on books, on CDs, and all kinds of things because I was just looking to somehow solve the problems. So, and then I started to realize, I started to see how the people were selling me those things. They were the people that did the best in selling me those things, and who I felt the best buying from because I felt like I was making the decision instead of them trying to force something on me. Were the people who were showing me the most understanding. They were showing me that they understood what I was going through the best, and often telling some kind of story about how they went through something very similar and how they tried the other things and why those things didn't work. And I thought, oh my gosh, this person has really walked this journey. They really understand even better than I do why the things I tried didn't work. And so they're really the person to guide me because they know why the things I'm doing don't work and they have something that's better. and if that inherently gives them authority because they're sharing um, their journey with me, and it makes sense. So
Got it.
that generates trust, and that trust is really the biggest factor. Whether they do it by telling a story or making doing it with a more logical approach, that's going to vary with the person as well. Like who resonates more with what? Because some people are more left brain oriented and some people are more right brain oriented. So the story works better with the right brain oriented, and some people are more the engineer types. Like you and I have an engineering background, although I'm also a sap, so the stories work well with me. Um, but it just depends who you're selling to.
Got it. So tell me more about your history, because I'm sure what did you when do you know in terms of marketing, and then how did you actually get there? What are the ups and downs? I'm sure it's not like a straight way to where you are now, from that perspective.
How did I get to where I am now in marketing?
Yeah. So what did you currently do now? So I think you did mention that earlier, and then also how did you actually get there? Because I'm sure it's not like linear path.
Definitely wasn't a linear path. I stumbled into marketing in some ways because back when I was a software engineer, the first project that I had when I was at a big travel company was to build a custom tracking and analytics platform because they didn't find something that they wanted in the market. I was back in early 2005, so even Google Analytics was just getting going. Google had bought a company called Urchin, and they were making it better, and they called it Google Analytics, but it wasn't nearly what it is now. And so I started, and I had honestly had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was struggling and I was figuring it out as I went, and it was a tough haul, and somehow eventually got it. But that was my first introduction into what it is to track things that are happening on a website and behavior, and ultimately how that tracks the revenue and all these things. And and then on the side of that, I discovered I'd always liked writing, and so I started doing a just helping some people with writing, and I in the process of that I discovered that there's something called copywriting, which is like writing to help influence people and writing to get a result basically from somebody to get them to take an action. I didn't even know that that was a profession at the time. That's how clueless I was. And then I started doing that just for friends, and eventually felt like, okay, I actually want to do marketing instead of anything else. I'd like to actually make that a full-time thing. Well, that took a long time. It was doing a lot of freelance projects and figuring out what it was that I wanted to do. And the process of that, one thing I really struggled with was specialization, because everybody says, hey, you should specialize in one thing. So I tried to specialize in email marketing, and I tried to specialize in analytics, and I tried to specialize in building community and all these different things that I got interested in at different times. And I realized that I'm actually not a specialist personality type, that I'm actually more of a renaissance type of soul, where I like to see everything and go in depth, and at the same time connect all the dots between the different things. And so in my current role, that's what I get to do. I'm running marketing as marketing director for a company, and I get to do that. And one of my friends, my coach friends, she gave me the perspective that I'm more like a James Cameron, who's a film director who made Titanic and Terminator and all these different films, and that I like to see the big picture and how all the dots connect, but at the same time, I like to drill really deep into certain parts and understand the deep details, and then come back up to the big picture and somehow move that, bring that vision to fruition eventually. So that's taken a long time, and I feel like I'm in a good role to do that now, but it's been a struggle to find that because I was so indoctrinated into that thinking that you have to specialize in just one thing and you can't do anything else.
Got it. Got it. So can you give me some examples as well as what do you currently do now?
Yeah, so I'm marketing director for a company that helps people launch software sales careers. So um, that's that's been in the vein of education that I wanted to stay in, because when I went to the personal growth industry after being a software engineer, I I knew that I wanted to continue doing something with education because I love watching make make breakthroughs. So on a day-to-day basis, a lot of times now I'm doing some combination of running advertising, measuring advertising. I am um, working with our team on our community, because we have a team of about 17 staff right now, and we have a Slack community for our customers. And I'm wanting to get to know everybody in there the best I can, so that I can continue to help their careers, because it's for me, it's not just like a one-time customer. For one thing, for that particular company, we have a lifetime membership, but it's always about relationships, and how do I continue to help them, because they will often give me ideas, as I help them in how to make what we call top of funnel even better. How do we attract new people into the funnel? So some combination of me writing advertising, me analyzing stats, me talking with people both on our team and customers. Although I'm guilty of not doing nearly enough talking with customers. I want to do a lot more of that, so that I can just understand everything better. I can have that empathy, because I'm always surprised by how people see things differently than I do.
Got it. So one last thing, curious about how did you actually translate that into the techniques, like understand data, and like there's a lot of techniques that's going on there. Right? I'm curious, what are some of the techniques that you use after you get that insight from the customer to actually have the best ROI on your marketing spend?
The techniques for best ROI marketing spend, you have to look at every step of the funnel. And it's, for example, if you're running an ad and that ad goes to a landing page, and that landing
Yeah.
page is an email opt-in landing page, so they give you their email, name and email, and then it goes to a thank you page, and then there's an application. Like, this is the type of funnel we have
Yeah.
for this company. There are certain steps that are often overlooked. Certainly, you want to look at the number of ad impressions you have, the number of people who are seeing the ad, and then the number of people who are actually engaging, clicking on the ad, then the number of people who are opting in, etc. But for example, just in that step right there, the number of people who click on the ad are not the same as the number of people who actually see the page. In fact, there's often quite a big drop off there, depending on what device they're on and how fast their speed is, because these days a lot of people are on mobile devices, and if your landing page isn't fast enough, then they'll bounce, they'll click away before the page even finishes loading. So that micro conversion, that step from clicking to viewing the page, there's a big drop off in there, but people often don't look at that when they look at their numbers. And so they wonder why their opt-in rate is so bad, or the number of people is nowhere near what the number of clicks was, when they're not noticing a step that happens there. And there's a number of examples like that all the way down the funnel, especially um, when you get to mid funnel, like someone applying and someone booking a call, then someone clicking the right emails that you care about, opening and clicking emails that you care about, when they're preparing for the call, and all the way down, and including the sales pipeline, because it's really just one big pipeline. Marketing always talks about it as funnel, and sales uses a different word. They say pipeline, so it seems like two different things, but it's really just one continuous pipe, all the way from seeing an ad all the way to buying. So in the sales part of it, you want to track every step that the prospect needs to take. Actually have a in your CRM, have a deal stage for that, to note that the person moved to the next stage of what you intend to be the process. And then,
Got it.
as far as data goes, there's also an attribution issue these days that's talked about a lot, but there's a lot of people aren't doing a whole lot about it. Attribution meaning, where did the person come from? What influenced their purchasing decision or their decision to opt in? Because you can have somebody who first clicks to your website from a Facebook ad, but they don't do anything. They don't even opt in. But then later on, they see a Google display advertising, one of those banner style ads on a website, and they click back to your website, and then they opt in then. So how do you assign credit to the Facebook ad versus the Google ad versus the emails, etc.? And people are coming up with various models for that, attribution models. And that's important now that you have so many different possible traffic sources and so many different types of interactions. It's never going to be perfect, because you just never know what exactly influences a given person to buy, but at least it's getting better than the standard has been last click attribution, which is the last thing somebody clicks on gets 100% of the credit, which is obviously ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's what the standard has been, but that really doesn't work
Got it. Got it. Cool. So kind of we're going to the last phase of the episode or show. Let's kind of talk about a single story or quote. So in this case, the story is about sticking to a single path in life. So when it talks about a mouth, they fell into a bucket. So he tried to get out, but he couldn't get out. Right. So then he would try to gnaw at the hole on one side of the bucket. When he realized it's too deep, so he tried a different place to see if it's softer, and not that place. And then so he keep going back and forth between different holes, trying to figure out an easy way to get out. But in the end, he did it all night long. He died. He ran out of energy, etc. Now, the thing is, had he gnaw at the same spot the entire night, he might have actually gotten out, right? So this kind of basically says that so the world is full of people who cannot help but laugh at the story. But the thing is, if you look at it, people who fail in one job, trying to find another job, and change job over and over again, different industry, different careers. So, so the thing is that they never stick to a single path in life, right? But that's very normal in today's terms. Obviously, you stuck with it. So I'm curious now your perspective of this story. There's also an Asian saying quote that says, "The persistent drip wears through the stone," right? So I'm curious about how you think about this story.
That's a sad story. That's the empathy in me. Um, it's a good story, especially for what I mentioned earlier, because that story to me is about focus. There's great power in focusing on something, and the distinction I have now is that that focus doesn't have to mean that you specialize in something and that you stay only there. But in the moment, whatever you're focusing on, there's power in that because then you can really make progress with that. The world and our minds really yield to us when and problems we have, whatever we're working on, really starts to clarify itself when we have enough focus in the moment and we focus on it long enough. And if we do that with any given thing, then it's we can get the result we want, and then we can move on to something else. So you can still have the variety in your life. I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. That they're not going to have any variety in their life or their working life if they take on this kind of focus. But you can have it for a period of time, get a good result with something, understand it enough, and then move on to something else that you then want to do after that. That's what I take from it.
Cool. I mean, is that actually applies to my life right now. There's so many things going on in my life right now that I feel like I don't have focus. So I've been actually trying to focus on all facets of my life, from career perspective, from relationship perspective, as well as financial perspective. Now I think I have multiple investment strategies before. I have like long-term holding, swing trading, option trading, like all the
Yeah,
different
yeah.
individual stock picking. It's like let me just pick one, and then like why am I worrying about all different things? Just keeping simple, right? So
They
like
all they all have a place if you can focus on if you have a system worked out for your swing trading, for example,
yeah,
then you're not really going to stress about it because you have a system already worked out. But if you don't have a system worked out for that part, which is a kind of an intermediate strategy as far as timeline goes, intermediate also in terms of skill level because you need some skill to do that. But if you have a system worked out for that and you're comfortable executing those strategies, then then it's not going to stress you out. And you're not going to need to put nearly as much focus on it because you already have it figured out for the most part. You just need to execute that. But if you haven't figured that out, then you want to focus on that for a while. Say, you know what, I have my systems trading strategy now, or swing trading strategy now. Now let me go work on my option trading strategy, or now let me go work on my long term strategy, whatever.
yeah. The reason I mentioned that was because I have so many different strategies, and I know which one's performing the best. I've data to prove that, right? And yeah, I still want to do all four or five, whatever. So now I'm up down to like one or two strategies, and now it has been like sometimes I mess up because emotions get greedy. I end up doing things a lot more. Like for example, when I want to do options, I'll have leverage, right? I sometimes get greedy and over leverage, and then I can't sleep at night. And I realize, oh shit, why am I doing this? because now I'm trying to make it more simple, but when you're more simple, there's not a lot of action going on, right? And there's not a lot of action. I feel like, man, I don't want to keep waiting. Versus like doing swing trading or day trading, it's like you always action, 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 But I realized that's actually how I performed lower than my other strategy, which is trading, selling options and holding long-term position in momentum trade that holds for like months to like a year, depending on like the momentum, right, on a long-term basis. And that on a net basis, I spend less time and I generate more return, right? So it just
Right.
like
That's a really classic
yeah,
example of having done trading as well.
yeah,
I totally get it because the excitement isn't there, but the results actually are better. So you've got to somehow find a way to have excitement in your life in a different way because, like, man, the data is showing that this isn't the right thing for me to do, or I'm not using the right systems. This thing's working better, and yet this thing is more exciting. So I got to find excitement somewhere in my life. If not
yeah.
here, I need to find it somewhere because otherwise, like, I'm just missing that part.
Cool.
So for me, I've found a lot of excitement in marketing. To me, it's a game I get to play every day, and obviously I take it seriously because there's money involved and clients and all of that. But I feel like it's a game I get to play that I enjoy playing. So most days I work at least some part of the day because I enjoy getting better at the game. It reminds me so much of what Kobe Bryant used to say about basketball. And he's gone now, but he was a great mentor to me in a distant sense because I never got to meet him. But I relate so much to the way that he talked about basketball as a craft that he loved, and it was the way that he made that mini movie or mini short about Dear Basketball. That's how I feel because um, marketing done well, selling done well, is a great service to the world. And people need help getting past their own fears and getting clarity about what actually they want in life and what can get them to their own hopes and dreams.
Yeah. Cool. So one is just summarize all the points we talked about. Let me know if I missed anything. One is um, having exposure therapies helps you overcome different things to actually get to where you go. That could be career, personal, among other things. And when it comes to marketing, actually the two main points is having empathies to offer a value and selling, as opposed to looking at pure techniques. Because when you're offering value, that's when you actually get the best data results from your test. And also you mentioned about marketing is actually a healing art of instant change. How do you actually use marketing in a positive way to help people to overcome their current limitations? So am I missing anything?
That's a good summary. Yeah, it's a really good summary. It's really about helping people embrace change that they want. So
Well,
I think
sounds good.
all of us need to remember that because so many of us are scared of selling, and that was me for a long time. That we fail to offer our own value, and it's a real tragedy because everyone has unique value to offer that only they can quite do it in that way. And when we're scared to even offer that, it's a real tragedy.
Cool. So if people want to reach you, how can they actually reach you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to look me up. That is one of the easiest ways to reach me. I'm also on Facebook. Sunni Sukumar. You'll have my name, the spelling, in the show notes, I'm sure. So those are some pretty easy ways to reach me.
Cool. Awesome. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, George.